New year, same old Pio that is late. Is he in the basement?
I checked this morning and he wasn't.
What country did he go and invade this time?
Are they here?
No, the Italian IRS isn't here today.
I am not talking about them. I have been found by others this time.
You have more enemies than Met Ward by this point, Pio. That doesn't narrow it down at all. Be specific. Who is looking for you this time?
Ever heard of the ICC?
No, what's that?
If you never heard of them, nobody important. Let's leave it at that.
They are so unimportant that you put on jungle camouflage body paint, that if anything makes you 200 times more visible because we are in a theater.
I don't go around critiquing your life choices, so don't critique my sense of fashion.
I murdered thousands for the Emperor and he gave me nothing except his damning silence. Now his lapdogs yap for every life I take, while the gods promise me the galaxy. Finally, back to obscure lore of 40k.
Unfortunately, back to learning 40k lore against my will and sanity. So, what is the lore subject of today?
We will talk about another obscure and brutal event in the history of the Imperium, and in my opinion the greatest folly ever committed by the Imperium of Man against his own forces.
Because the tax war for Badab obviously was just Thursday in the Imperium of Man.
Don't name the war in front of me, I have daily PTSD episodes about working on it.
And why is Inquisitor Eisenflork here and looming over us like a vulture? Can we even still call him Eisenflork?
It is a nice name and a good callback to Florkier times.
So, if he's here, it means we are dealing with more heretical events. Hope my boys aren't involved for once.
Gladly, no. Today we will talk of events taking place in M37, and to be specific we will talk about the Abyssal Crusade. That was, as I said, one of the biggest follies the Imperium ever committed, even worse than the Proletarian Crusade, if you ask me. See, the events leading up to the Abyssal Crusade weren't of the positive kind for the Imperium of Man. At the end of M35, for example, we have both a resurgence in the presence of the extremely dangerous xenospecies of the Hers and the creation of the Curse Founding. In M36, we have the Reign of Blood of Gog Vandire and the Plague of Unbelief. At the beginning of M37, we have the Wrath of the Chaos Sun event, which I invite you all to do some research on, as it is a very interesting concept for Chaos Corruption. And then, we come to the date of 321 M37. To be extremely specific about what happened, after the eruption of Warpstorm Dionis and its echoes in the Empyrean, over a dozen systems were hit by its influence. And those same systems and the worlds that formed them saw an extreme spike in mutations and chaos activities. To the point that both records of mutations and cultist activity on all worlds hit by the Warpstorm quadrupled overnight. Worse yet, it was not only the citizens who were affected by this sudden influx of chaos energy, but many of the Space Marine chapters with homeworlds in the path of Warpstorm Dionis found that the imperfections and mutations of their geneseed were boosted on their new recruits, giving rise to a wave of disturbing mutations and manifestations, both physical and psychological, on them. When the Ecclesiarchy, or better known as the Imperial Church, became aware of this sinister turn of events, Saint Basilius, an esteemed and revered Imperial saint and an influential high-ranking member of the Church, demanded that all those chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, whose homeworlds had been hit by the Warpstorm, to be rendered unto his judgment. Saint Basilius was so influential with the High Lords of Terra that within a year this had come to pass. A series of stringent tests and prognostications took place. Hundreds of chapters were deemed unaffected by the Warpstorm, but no less than 30 were found wanting. Now, we will use visual representation for the chapters during the video, but keep in mind that for many of the chapters, we know nothing of how they looked like pre-Abyssal Crusade, or even after the events that will unfold. So, know that the majority of what we will show are fan arts recreated following vague descriptions given to us as we research this story. Don't take them as canon, as a canon representation for many of them doesn't exist. The chapters were the following: Lectors of Ixis, Knights Excelsior, Invictors, Lion Guard, Graven Fists, Lances of Teros, Blades Eternal, Brothers of the Anvil, Sigillites, Viridian Consuls, Altar Brethren, Vengeance Chapter, Sentinels, Chorus of Eltane, Tempest Legion, Bronze Gorgons, Prophets of Mercury, Argent Hammers, Iron Drakes, Illustrians, Doom Legion, Serpents of Light, Spears of Olympus, Clerics of Steel, Star Griffons, Feast of Olkis, Justicars, Sanctus of Terra, Crusaders of Dorn, and lastly, the Vorpal Swords. The Judged, as these fallen chapters came to be known, volunteered for a redemptive crusade, with the most militant of their number demanding the right to purify their tainted flesh in the fires of battle, to make a noble end from tragic misfortune. Now, here the sources diverge lightly, because while in the 6th edition rulebook it is said in the timeline that they were given a choice between instant death or a crusade into the Eye of Terror, in the 6th edition Chaos Space Marine Codex, where the story of the Abyssal Crusade is explained, there is no mention that they would have been destroyed outright, but that they would have been looked at with suspicion and doubt from that point on, and they preferred martyrdom to that. Once again, Games Workshop shows that he can't keep a story straight between two codexes of the same exact edition. Anyway, surprising even his closest advisors, Saint Basilius agreed to the proposal of a crusade of purification for the judged chapters, and he saw fitting to send the accused into the Eye of Terror, taking the fight for the Imperium's future to the demon worlds inhabited by the Chaos Space Marines. At that point, a representative from each of the doomed chapters held an emergency council of dismay to discuss the proposed crusade. After scant hours of debate, they accepted the demands of Saint Basilius, as they believed martyrdom for the Imperium was a preferable choice to an existence under constant suspicion and doubt.
Wait, stop the music, stop the video. You are telling me that because one single high-ranking member of the Imperial Church found problems with 30 Space Marine chapters that were in the territory of a violent warp storm that they had no control in detecting or preventing, that the Elors of Terra gave power to that same high-ranking member of the Church to decide the fate of those chapters?
Yeah.
And he decided, in all of his great wisdom, to sentence the equivalent of a portion of a Legion force of Marines, because if the chapters were at full strength, that would mean 30,000 Space Marines, to travel directly to the equivalent of 40k Hell and move order.
Correct.
That will be the equivalent of me putting on a puppet, going directly to Chapter Master Calgar of the Ultramarines, and telling him, "Greetings, I'm St. Pionius from Terra. I find your chaplain Leandros to be a very annoying member of your chapter and that he brings great dishonor in your ranks. Because of that, I connect the Ultramarine chapter to collectively jump inside an active volcano on Armored. Those that come back alive shall be cleansed of the dishonor of tolerating chaplain Leandros. And the worst part of all is that following the logic of those 30 chapters that could literally just kill Saint Basilius and declare him an heretic for his accusations against the angels of the Emperor, Calgar will just go,
Okay, sure.
To be honest, I myself am surprised that the chapter masters of 30 Space Marine chapters simply agreed with the entire situation, but not everyone can be as beautiful and smart as our Patreon members and our Discord members. Links in the description.
I am starting to think there is like 3 people competent at their job in the entire Imperium, and 2 of them are Gilliman and Alfarius.
Returning to the events of the Abyssal Crusade, the last few days of 321 M37 saw a solemn procession of strike cruisers and battle barges pass through the Cadian Gate into the Eye of Terror. Relay systems dormant and heraldic colors obscured by black mag plates. One by one, the chapters of the Judge disappeared into the iridescent dust nebulae that surrounded the Eye, flickering out of reach from Cadia's astropaths within a single night. Less than an hour after the Judged made transition into the Eye, a warfleet of misshapen battlecrafts encrusted with the sigils of chaos emerged from the dust clouds to intercept them. Torpedoes ripped open holes and blew out docking bays, and lance fire crackled through the Ether to stab through the leviathans of the Imperial fleet. Soon, the battle raged so fiercely that all cohesion amongst the Judge fleet was lost. The sheer amount of destruction meted out caused a great turmoil in the warp, and the fabric of space itself began to tear open. Just as the Chaos fleet retreated, the ships of the Judged were scattered to the furthest corners of the Eye, and it is from here that all the chapters of the Judged will meet their final fate in the Crusade. On the pestilent world of Anatrax, the Iron Drake's chapter made planetfall in force, smashing through bulbous fungus forest of giant puffy-eyed heads that coughed and sneezed the grey mucus onto the Space Marines deploying from their drop pods. The Iron Drakes fought bravely, but one by one they were brought low. Though their respirators filtered the air of disease, many of the Space Marines found their power armor cracked and laid open by the torrent of bolter fire leveled upon them by hidden Plague Marines. By the time a full half of the chapter had bulged screaming out of their armor to become fungus trees themselves, the rest were ready to surrender, pledging their souls to Nargol. Thus did the Iron Drakes become the Grey Death, ready and willing to spread their plague across the stars. The ever-vigilant Sentinels chapter quickly found signs of Chaos Space Marine infestation, making planetfall upon the fleshy crust of Oliensis. Only when their long-range scans of a nearby mountain range revealed the topography of a human face did they realize the demon world they had invaded took the form of a morbidly obese man, curled into a fetal ball. Putting their doubts to the side, the Battle Brothers of the Sentinels hunted down and exterminated the goat-headed hedonist that frolicked between the tree-trunk hairs soaring up into the skies above. The ecstatic death blasts of the cultist didn't go unheard. From the planet's yawling spores came gaudily painted Slaneshi noise marines, their sonic weapons splitting the night air with blood-curdling salvos. The Sentinels crashed headlong into battle with their outlandish foes, but as more and more flesh worshippers emerged to join the fray, the planet itself stirred, awoken by the din. Lake-sized eyes gleaming, Oliensis shoveled the combatants into its waterfall gullet, with a hand the size of a tectonic plate. By the time the Sentinels were regurgitated back into reality, they were unrecognizable as loyalists. They had been refashioned into the cannibalistic Corpus Brethren, every bit as deranged as the Slanesh-worshipping heretics they now fought beside. Meanwhile, across the void Galatamar, the Knight Excelsior fought desperately to make sense of their new environment. The planet of Temporia was a mind-bending contradiction of cog plateaus, helical manufactoria and spiraling stairways that clanked and spun around the newcomers as if they were the epicenter of the world they had invaded. At first glance, the Knights thought the beasts that crested each of the towering buildings were no more than drake-headed gargoyles, but the creatures unfolded themselves from the spires and roofs and plummeted towards the Space Marines, their maw-mounted weapons spitting fire. Yet more demon engines clattered from the sweltering forges of each cog complex, as red-hot lava rained upward towards the intruders in defiance of physical law. Covered in the holy blood of demon engines, the Knights Excelsior hacked a path back to their ships, but their escape was far from secure. The creators of the demon beast, Warpsmith Valadrak, allowed the Knights to embark upon their strike cruisers before setting loose an electricity-eating demon fashioned from tortured machine spirits. With the controls of their dormant warships rebelling against them and their advanced war gear pulsing with static, the Space Marines were overrun. Seized up in the piston-driven claws of Temporia's demon engines and thrust into the red-hot soul forges of Valadrak's fortress. Less than a year later, the renegade magma hounds were seen abroad in the Cadian system, their number almost double that of previous sightings. Upon the crown world of Belial Fort, the Brothers of the Anvil scoured the tumbled spires of the original Eldar Empire, only to be brought to battle and eventually captured by the Xenos Kabbalites that searched the ancient planet for arcane artifacts. After a year of nightmarish ordeals in the Commorite arenas, the broken remnants of the Brothers of the Anvil slaughtered their way back into real space, where they killed every living thing they found. Chapter after chapter fell to the perils of the Eye, for the Abyssal Crusade had entered a hell from which very few emerged unchanged. And while all of this was happening, Pio is suspected to have been committing war crimes in the territory of the now former Yugoslavia. The fuck? I didn't write this into the script.
I did.
Why? And especially how?
I didn't want to feel excluded. I also left another gift in the script right after this part.
What is he talking about now? Oh, you two-dimensional, trans-dimensional motherfucker!
Aha, got him.
You have to hope the future me editing this video doesn't want vengeance for that.
I really want to see what he can do against me here.
Moving on. The tales of corruption and suffering of the Judge chapter go on, though few outside of the mysterious Black Library have any idea to their extent. The adepts of the Administratum outright deny any link between the loss of the Judged and the increased frequency of Chaos Space Marine raids thereafter. All that is known is that, almost 800 years after the Abyssal Crusade began, the remnants of some of the Judge chapters returned from the warp. They could barely contain their fury when they were detained by the agents of the Inquisition and tested for the taint of chaos. As they passed every test, a horrible truth came to light. Same Basilius still lived, and the testimony of Convac Lan, chapter master of the Warpulse Wars chapter, revealed him as a false idol, guilty of sending innocents into the jaws of damnation. The Vorpal Zords led the other survivors, blazing with righteous anger, to penetrate the defenses of Basilius' palace. They found the unaccountably ancient saint and finally revealed Basilius' true nature as an apostle of chaos. Basilius and thousands of his followers were slain, his shrines destroyed, and every relic and tome of his creed burned, as if he had never existed. Even so, the full extent of his corruption and the reach of his influence has never been discovered. But, because we like to be extremely thorough with our lore videos, we decided to research all chapters that took part in the Abyssal Crusade to report their fates too, as the main events of the Crusade unfortunately don't cover all of the chapters of the Judged. So, this is what happened to the rest of the chapters that were part of the Crusade. The Electors of Ixis were corrupted during the Abyssal Crusade, and they became the Chaos Warband of Tzeentch known as the Oracles of Change. This warband also took part in the invasion of Rashad Prime, the invasion of the Stygius Sector, and the Nakmund Rift War. We covered the Knights Excelsior that became the Magma Hounds. The Magma Hounds warband took part even in the War of Beast on Vigilus, under command of Warsmith Valadrak himself. Unfortunately, not much is known about the Invictors, that became the Unallowed warband, if not that after their fall to Chaos, the Unallowed were documented as cooperating with a secret Space Marine warband known as the Warp Ghosts. The Lion Guard instead became corrupted during the Abyssal Crusade, and they became a new warband specialized in sabotage and terror tactics, known as the Death Shadows. After a disastrous war against Ultramar, the Death Shadows withdrew to their secret stronghold on the fortress world of Sybari. In 745 and 41, while they were preparing a strike against Macragge, the homeworld of the Ultramarines and capital of the system of Ultramar, tendrils of High Fleet Behemoth fell upon the Death Shadows' base of operations. In what will become known as the Sybari Slaughter, the members of the warband of the Death Shadows became isolated when the Shadow and the Warp enveloped their system, and their warlord, Sorcerer Malafor, was driven to insanity by the Tyranids' psychic presence. Leaderless, and in the midst of preparing for an assault of their own, the renegades are unprepared to defend Sybari from the swarm. Though they reap a high tally, the entire warband on Sybari is annihilated in less than an hour. But the warband still exists, as documented by Loven Valstor, that was a member of the Death Shadows. When the Tyranids hit Sybari, he was scouting the periphery of the Ultramar system in preparation for the attack. And while he lost contact with the rest of his warband, he is sure that his warband is too strong and too subtle to have been shattered, and that at one point they will re-emerge. And he has full intent to reunite with them when they do. Of the fate of the Graven Fist, we know even less. We know they were corrupted and became the Twisted Blades, but nothing more than that. The Lances of Theros were corrupted during the Abyssal Crusade, and became worshippers of Nargol before joining the Lords of Decay, that by themselves are a large Death Guard sub-faction. They have fought against the Imperium on various engagements, most notable of which being the Siege of Vraks and the Starmex incident. Then we have the Blades Eternal. They are one of the few chapters that was never corrupted and never returned from the Crusade. They are believed to have been destroyed to the last man during the Crusade inside the Eye of Terror. Then we have the Brothers of the Anvil, that as explained were captured by Dark Eldars during the Crusade, and forced for a year to fight in their arenas in Commora, which drove them to insanity, and when they managed to escape back into reality, they became the Deathmongers. A Chaos Space Marine warband, completely dedicated only to the destruction of everything they find. Imperial, Xenos, or Chaos is not important. They are renowned as having been part of the Orpheus Revolt. The Sigilites instead, corrupted during the Abyssal Crusade, became a Chaos warband known as the Malefactors. Their only notable engagement against the Imperium was when they assaulted Alaric Prime with the intention of seizing as many Imperial Knights as they could for their warband, being stopped by Freeblade Knight Gerantius when he led the defense of the Sacred Mountain, destroying enough of the invaders to drive the rest of planet in 959 M36? Oh, come on, they can't keep straight the dates even here. The Abyssal Crusade happened in 321 M37, almost 400 years after this date. And it is not a problem of Lexicanum either, it is written in Sanctus' rich supplement, the Red Waaagh. Games Workshop doesn't make being a lore YouTuber easy, as usual. The Viridian consuls instead became corrupted during the Abyssal Crusade, with their chapter master known as Prinon becoming a demon prince, renaming himself the Witness, and the warband being renamed to the Broken. The Witness was later banished into the warp by Marneus Calgar on the Space Hulk Fury. The Altar Brethren became corrupted during the Abyssal Crusade and became a warband known as the Iconoclasts, a warband of marines that targets the Imperium's shrine worlds and is on a mission to destroy them all, with the only notable engagement with them happening in 237 and 41, when they targeted the shrine worlds of the False Reach system. Of the Vengeance chapter, almost nothing is known. They became corrupted during the Abyssal Crusade and became the Chaos warband known as the Flylords. Nothing else, nothing notable. The Sentinels, as explained, became corrupted by Chaos during the Abyssal Crusade and during their assault on the world of Oliensis, being reborn there as the Corpus Brethren warband, that for some reason Lexicanum lists as a citation issue that they are loyal to Slaanesh, when in their own story they were described as fighting side by side with the Slaaneshi cultists they were slaughtering before being corrupted. So I doubt they are corrupted by fucking Khorne! The Chorus of Elthane instead were destroyed completely in the Abyssal Crusade, the news of their destruction not even reaching some of the Forge worlds producing weapons for them, with the weapons produced for the chapter sitting unused for several thousand years. Instead, the Tempest Legion were also corrupted during the Crusade, becoming the revelation of Gore, Chaos Marines warband. Nothing else notable is known about them. Also of the Bronze Gorgons not much is known, if not their designation after being corrupted during the Abyssal Crusade, as they became the Crystal Wyverns. And to follow this pattern, we know nothing of what happened to the Prophets of Mercury. All we know is that they were completely destroyed inside the Eye of Terror during the Crusade. Then we have the Argent Hammers. They were corrupted during the Abyssal Crusade and fell to the corruption of Nargol. And do you want to have a very big laugh? Their entire Lexicanum page is pure bullshit. While yes, their new designation is the Talons of Anatrax, the entirety of the lore of them becoming corrupted on the demon world of Anatrax, which is the same world that corrupted the Iron Drakes, is pure speculation. It is so much of a speculation, in fact, that in Imperial Armour Volume 2 2nd edition, they are not even called the Talons of Anatrax, but they are still referred to as the Argent Hammers Outcast Chapter. Then we have the Iron Drakes. As I narrated, they became corrupted on the world of Anatrax, with half of the chapter becoming screaming fungus trees, and the rest surrendering, and becoming the Grey Death, a warband of space marines completely devoted to Nargol, and re-emerged later from the Eye of Terror to start spreading plagues in the Imperium of Men. Of the Illustrians, not much is known, just that they became corrupted during the Crusade and formed a warband known as the Black Psalm. The Doom Legion, instead, were not fully corrupted by Chaos. Because of their duties of watching over the Lucian Maze, only 6 companies of the chapter took part in the Abyssal Crusade. 5 of these companies were corrupted into the Vectors of Pox warband. And even with the Inquisition subjecting the rest of the Doom Legion to rigorous examination for signs of corruption, they found none. The Vectors of Pox actually contacted their former brothers and attempted to corrupt them to join the warband and swear allegiance to Chaos. And under their chapter master at the time, Lord Constantos, they killed the Vectors of Pox emissary that had approached them, remaining loyal to the Imperium of Men. The Serpents of Light, instead, were fully corrupted during the Abyssal Crusade, and became a warband known as the Predator Legion. Nothing else known about them. The Spears of Olympus will become corrupted too during the Abyssal Crusade, and will rename themselves as the Bloodlords Warband. Strangely, all actions known about them are either against other Chaos forces or Xenos. This seems a bit of a failure of a Chaos warband. The Clerics of Steel, instead, were corrupted to Chaos Undivided during the Crusade, and became known as the Invocators Chaos Space Marine Warband. This warband is known to be devoted to Chaos and to completing as many Chaos rituals as they can to invoke favor of all major and minor gods, and are renowned for taking part to the Prosperan Rift War and also the Nakmund Rift War. Of the Star Gryphon's fate, nothing is known, if not that they became corrupted and became the Sons of Midnight Chaos Space Marine Warband. The Feast of Volkis, instead, bring more problems to the table in a matter of canon, because in the tabloids of the Abyssal Crusade they are listed as Perditas, which means lost in the warp in an unknown state, and yet they are also listed in Imperial Armour Volume 2 2nd edition as having come back as an outcast chapter of Chaos Marines together with the Argent Hammers, and that they were almost annihilated by the Red Talons chapter. So, believe what you want, people. Games Workshop fumbled this one. The Justicars, instead, were corrupted fully during the Abyssal Crusade, and became known as the Fractured. Nothing else known about them. Then we have the Sanctus of Terra, that during the Crusade became corrupted and became the warband known as the Blighted Claw under the Chaos God Nargol. They are still led by their former chapter master Paramix, and are renowned for having invaded the planet of Geoft, where they brought the demonic legions of Nargol and a virulent zombie plague, inflicting heavy losses to the united army of the White Scars, Dark Angels, and Brindlewold 17th Imperial Guard Regiment, forcing the Imperium to bring down an exterminatus on the planet. Their chapter master is still at large and is being actively hunted down. And last of the corrupted chapters of the Abyssal Crusade, we have the Crusaders of Dorn, that once corrupted became known as the Brotherhood of Lete, with their former name sparking theories that they were of Imperial Fist descendants. But I will add something on top of that. Their new name is Brotherhood of Lete. Now, if you watch my video on the Space Marines that went against the Inquisition, you know that Lete is the former homeworld of the now expunged chapter of Space Marines known as the Flame Falcons, expunged because of their mutation that caused them to be enveloped in flames when under stress. Flames that were bringing them new strength and renewed vigor to fight in battle. Seeing the name of the warband they became, I suspect that the Crusaders of Dorn at some point, inside the Eye of Terror, came into contact with an escaped and forgotten warband of Flame Falcons, and decided to unite together to survive in the warp, even if becoming corrupted by chaos in the process. This might also mean that the Flame Falcons were Imperial Fist descendants. And lastly, we have the Vorpal Swords, the only chapter to officially come back from the Crusade in the Eye of Terror untainted, under the guidance of their chapter master Konvak Lan. When they returned, after having scoured by their ward more than 400 worlds from Chaos Taint, the Vorpal Swords moved to punish Saint Basilius, that they had learned was a servant of Chaos. Once he and all of his followers were slain, his remnants and all of his relics were loaded into a derelict bulk freighter and launched directly into a nearby star to be incinerated. The Vorpal Swords are active in the Imperium to this day, their most recent engagement being in M41, when they assisted in stopping a demon incursion on the planet of Geistos. And this was the Abyssal Crusade, in my opinion the biggest folly ever committed by the Imperium of Men. If Badab wasn't up there to take the throne, this crusade certainly is.
I'm surprised nobody in the Inquisition even tried to object to the ruling of Basilius. They have the Order Astartes in their ranks. That order was made to oversee the chapters of Space Marines. Why was none of them called?
Because it is the Imperium. If somebody isn't completely inept at their job, is not qualified to have it. And now we start the preparations for next video, that I will have a lot of fun making, and has been long overdue.
What is it about?
The long-awaited sequel. I will enjoy this.
Okay, he has officially lost his mind. Please send help.
I want to thank personally Talradian, a fan of the chapter and apostle of lore, for helping us out with the research for the Abyssal Crusade, and making all the Space Marine chapter avatars to represent them in the video. His links are in the description, and is open for commissions to make personalized ones.